Agatha Morgan had long been known around Elmwood for two things: her meticulously maintained rose garden and her profound affection for cats. She lived on a quiet, tree-lined street with a small porch that sagged slightly under the weight of lush-hanging ferns. All the neighbours knew that if a cat was missing, they should ask Agatha first. She always had a full bag of treats in the pocket of her cardigan and an endless supply of warm spots for napping felines scattered around her cosy home. 12 years into her retirement, life moved at a gentle pace. She spent her mornings checking on her roses, reading the local newspaper on her porch, and occasionally having a friendly chat with the mail carrier. Her evenings were devoted to relaxing in a faded armchair, crocheting blankets for the local shelter, and doting on her cherished cat, Mr. Tibbles. Mr. Tibbles, a lanky tuxedo cat with a white splotch across his nose, came and went as he pleased. He was the kind of feline whose regal manner suggested distant nobility. In a single stride he could dart off in pursuit of a butterfly, or decide it was time to nap in a patch of sunlight. He was independent and self-possessed, yet he loved returning to Agatha every night, meowing for ear scratches and the canned salmon she served. One late afternoon, after a pleasant day of light gardening, Agatha heard Mr. Tibbles meow at the back door. She opened it and bent down to greet him. That was when she noticed he was gingerly carrying something in his mouth. It looked like a small, worn-out teddy bear, missing one eye and slightly frayed at the ears. "Oh, Mr. Tibbles," she murmured. "Where did you find this little fellow?" The cat dropped the teddy at her feet, tail swishing from side to side. Curiosity piqued. After all, Mr. Tibbles had never been known to bring home anything more interesting than the occasional leaf. Agatha picked it up. It was oddly heavy for such a small toy. Like there was something inside. A gentle squeeze suggested it was more than just old fluff. Intrigued, she took it inside, flipped on the lamp in her living room, and examined the bear under the light. Beneath the worn fabric she felt a lump. She carefully made a small slit along a previous tear. After a moment of delicate maneuvering, her nimble fingers extracted a tiny metal key. "That's peculiar," she said quietly, her mind whirling with questions. What on earth is a key doing hidden in a teddy bear? Later that evening, Mr. Tibbles curled up on her lap, purring contentedly while she studied the key. It was small, probably meant for a diary lock or a little box, with faint etchings that looked decades old. Agatha set it aside on a small side table, planning to ask around the neighborhood. Maybe the key belonged to someone who'd lost a child's toy. The next day, she saw her neighbor Harriet Bloom raking leaves across the street. Harriet, a widowed retiree like herself, had a keen awareness of local goings-on. Agatha ventured over, the key in her pocket. "Harriet, have you seen any missing toy notices? Something that belonged to a child, perhaps?" Harriet frowned thoughtfully. "Not that I recall, but you know, the tens of flyers around town are for those stolen garden decorations. The police say there have been a string of petty thefts, but I haven't heard anything about missing toys. Why do you ask?" Agatha explained how Mr. Tibbles had brought home the teddy bear with a hidden key inside. Harriet's eyes widened slightly. "How mysterious. Your cat might be onto something. Then again, cats are curious creatures. Who knows what they pick up in their wanderings?" Agatha nodded politely and thanked Harriet before returning to her porch. She was left with a ripple of uncertainty. It did strike her as strange. She hadn't heard about any missing children's toys, and it wasn't as if Elmwood was home to a legion of teddy bears. The key rested in her cardigan pocket, emblem of a puzzle she was not sure she wanted to unravel. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Several days later, just as the sun sank behind the horizon in a watercolor sky, Mr. Tibbles came bounding up the path with something else in his mouth. This time, it was a small cloth pouch embroidered with daisies. It looked dated, the fabric dusty and fraying at the edges. He dropped it at her feet, weaving around her ankles in a figure 8. "All right," Agatha said aloud, as if speaking to a small child. "Let's see what you've got for me now." She picked up the pouch and gingerly opened its drawstring. Her eyebrows rose. Inside were 2 polished stones, each about the size of a marble. One was a milky quartz, and the other a piece of smooth jade. Between the stones was a slip of wrinkled paper with faint handwriting. "The second clue always reveals the way, but the first hides the route where the secret may stay." Agatha felt her heart rate spike. This was more than a random find. Something or someone wanted these clues out in the open. She reread the note several times, puzzling over its meaning. Considering it was labeled "the second clue," it occurred to her that the teddy bear's hidden key must be the first. Had Mr. Tibbles stumbled into some elaborate game? Or was someone deliberately using random objects to send cryptic messages? She realized that she had to take a proactive approach. Where on earth had Mr. Tibbles found these items? Obviously, he couldn't tell her, so she'd have to do some detective work on her own. After carefully storing the cloth pouch and the note in an old cigar box on her dressing table, she lay awake half the night, imagining all sorts of improbable scenarios. A treasure hunt, a hidden diary, perhaps even a secret from Elmwood's past waiting to be unearthed. By morning, she resolved to stroll around the neighborhood and see if anyone else noticed missing objects or had found strange notes. Elmwood wasn't a large town. News spread quickly, and people were generally eager to help. She also had a plan to follow Mr. Tibbles whenever he dashed off on his next expedition, though she wasn't entirely sure how. Agatha's first stop was the local bakery, run by the sweet-natured Delia March. Between the smell of sugary pastries and yeast dough, Agatha asked, "Delia, have you heard about any lost teddy bears or cloth pouches?" Delia shook her head, brow furrowed. "No, can't say I have. Usually we get flyers for missing pets, not missing keepsakes. Are you missing something yourself?" Agatha explained, at least in general terms, how Mr. Tibbles had been bringing home these odd items. Delia smiled and suggested perhaps the cat had discovered an old hidden box in an abandoned house. But there wasn't any abandoned property in Elmwood, at least not that anyone knew of. She thanked Dilly and moved on to the pharmacy, the library, and the small grocery store. No one had any leads, and so the day ended with the mystery still very much intact. That evening, Agatha poured herself a cup of chamomile tea and settled in her armchair. She carefully removed the key, the 2 stones, and the slip of paper from her cigar box. For a long while she toyed with the key, turning it over in her hands, looking at the faint etchings. The designs reminded her of delicate ivy vines. She wondered if the cloth pouch's embroidered daisies had any connection to the key's vine-like pattern flowers and greenery seemed to be a theme. Then came the note. "The second clue always reveals the way, but the first hides the route where the secret may stay." What if the root was related to plants like vines or daisies? Agatha sighed and tucked everything away, drifting off into a dreamless sleep with Mr. Tibbles curled at her feet. A few more days passed calmly until she heard Mr. Tibbles scratching at the kitchen door early one morning. She found him blinking up at her, carrying something small and metallic in his mouth. As he released it onto the linoleum floor, it rang out with a bright, chiming noise. It was a teaspoon, old tarnished silver, with an ornate handle shaped like a lily. Engraved on the top of the handle was a single letter. M. Agatha bent down, her voice gentle but urgent with curiosity. "Where in the world do you keep finding these things, Mr. Tibbles?" She half expected him to meow an explanation. She rinsed the spoon off in the sink, then dried it. After placing it next to her other findings, she took out the poem again, reading it for maybe the 100th time. The spoon's lily design was yet another floral motif. Everything seemed connected to plants or flowers somehow. That afternoon, she visited Harriet Bloom. Harriet's tidy living room was reminiscent of a well-kept dollhouse, with lace doilies on every surface and neatly arranged porcelain figurines. They sat on the couch, Mr. Tibbles dozing near Harriet's knitting basket, while Agatha recounted the story of the additional clue. You have a key with vine-like etchings, an embroidered pouch with daisies, polished stones, and now a spoon with lilies, Harriet repeated, counting them off on her finger. Is it possible these objects are referencing the Elmwood Botanical Gardens? Harriet set down her teacup. You know how the gardens were once privately owned by the Milano family. That might explain the mim on the spoon handle. It was a revelation. The Milano family had once been the pride of Elmwood, wealthy philanthropists who donated parcels of land for the local library, the children's hospital, and ultimately the Elmwood Botanical Gardens. Forgotten for years, the estate had eventually been turned into the public gardens that now graced the centre of town. Agatha leaned forward, gripping the edge of Harriet's crocheted doily. The Milano family. That's right. They were known for their love of exotic flowers. I recall stories about the original mansion having secret rooms, hidden antiques from their travels. She paused, considering the significance of the crocheted daisies, the lily-engraved spoon, the key with vines, all of it evoking images of a lush garden. Could there be something hidden in the old greenhouse or the caretaker's cottage? Harriet's eyes sparkled. You should talk to Mrs. Garrison at the gardens. She's been the head caretaker for ages, loves all the local lore. Maybe she can point you in the right direction. The very next morning, Agatha put the key in her purse, tucked the spoon, pouch and note in a proper box, and decided to visit the Elmwood Botanical Gardens. The air was crisp, leaves swirling around her ankles as she walked through the ornate iron gates. The main path curved through manicured hedges and clusters of flowers just starting to fade with the approach of autumn. She made her way to a small brick caretaker's cottage, located to the right of a large glass greenhouse. Mrs. Garrison was hunched over a tray of seedlings, inspecting the soil. White-haired, with a face tanned by many summers of outside work, she greeted Agatha warmly. When Agatha explained her predicament, Mrs. Garrison's eyes lit up. Ah! The Milano estate was filled with hidden nooks. Legend has it they placed small personal items throughout the property, locking away old journals, letters, and even family heirlooms. My guess is that key you have might open some hidden compartment or trunk. The vines you describe could very well be symbolic of the greenhouse. However, I can't say for certain where you'd find it. Agatha mentioned the spoon engraved with M, the daisies on the pouch, and the poem's reference to a secret. Mrs. Garrison mused. The daisies and lilies might point you to specific sections of the garden. We do have rows of daisies near the eastern fountain and lilies near the southwestern pond. If this is a puzzle referencing the original design of the garden, perhaps you'll find more clues in those spots. Buoyed by excitement, Agatha left Mr. Tibbles at home and spent hours wandering through the gardens. She visited the daisies along the eastern fountain, gently exploring the flower beds, checking for anything out of the ordinary. A hidden box, a slip of paper, or some sign of a missing clue. Nothing turned up except a few curious squirrels eyeing her from the branches. She then circled around to the lilies near the pond, stooping to inspect the plants, but found nothing beyond some slimy green algae near the water's edge. As the sun dipped lower, she headed home, her arms tired from all that searching. But Mr. Tibbles wasn't done. That evening, Agatha watched him stealthily exit the cat flap in the back door and vanish into the darkness. She threw on a light jacket and stepped off her porch, determined to quietly trail behind him. Part of her felt silly sneaking around like a detective in a mystery novel, but her curiosity spurred her on. The cat led her down a winding path behind the houses, across a small park, and finally toward a stand of overgrown bushes near the east side of Elmwood's old church. The structure was made of grey stone with stained glass windows that glowed faintly whenever a light inside was on. A big oak tree towered behind it, and nestled among the tree's thick roots was a gap in the earth. Agatha crouched behind a shrub, heart pounding, as she watched Mr. Tibbles nose around the trunk. That's when she noticed something nestled in the leaves. She stifled a gasp as Mr. Tibbles pawed at a small ring box, the old-fashioned velvet kind one might expect to see in an antique store. Carefully, with trembling hands, Agatha retrieved it. She slowly opened the box, half expecting to find a glittering jewel. Instead, she found a simple gold band with a single embossed rose. Underneath the velvet lining was another slip of paper, the edges brittle with age. The Milwaukee trip changed everything. Remember to bury the ring in safe ground. Agatha read it twice, heart fluttering at the thought of whose ring this was and why it had been buried here. Milwaukee? The Milano family might have travelled there. She tucked her discovery into her cardigan pocket and looked around uncertainly, but the night cloaked everything in shadow. Mr. Tibbles meowed once, as though congratulating her on their newest find, and trotted back toward home. Later, after returning indoors, she laid out the ring, the note, the key, the spoon, the embroidered pouch, and the first poem. Clearly, these items were all connected to some lost piece of Elmwood history. She wondered if the ring was an heirloom from the Milano dynasty, left behind for unknown reasons. That night, she dreamt of locked boxes in old mansions and diaries riddled with cryptic confessions. By morning, she was resolved to dig deeper and find someone else who might know about the Milano family's possible ties to Milwaukee. That pointed her straight to the local archives in Elmwood's public library, a quiet, musty room crammed with old maps, newspapers, and genealogical records. Arthur Brown, the librarian, was a patient sort who actually thrived on a good research challenge. Agatha set the items on a small table in the archive room and explained the whole story. Flipping through a worn genealogical ledger, Martha eventually located an entry. Milano family travelled to Milwaukee in 1952 for a medical treatment, apparently for the elder Mrs. Milano. She frowned, skimming further. It seems that her condition worsened, and they returned to Elmwood fairly soon. Word in the local papers was that she died not long after coming back. How sad, Agatha said softly. Do the records mention anything about a ring? Not specifically, Martha replied. But it wouldn't surprise me if a grieving family member took to burying keepsakes. People mourn in all sorts of ways, especially in those days. If your cat has been unearthing these items, it could be from a time capsule or family hiding place. Agatha leaned back, a flurry of understanding washing over her. She recalled the poem line, "But the first hides the root where the secret may stay." Could the old oak near the church have been special to the Milano family? Perhaps the ring was placed beneath that tree for sentimental reasons, or even as part of a will request. She returned home and carefully gathered all of Mr. Tibbles's discoveries, examining them as one set of artifacts. The teddy bear's hidden key, the cloth pouch with stones and a cryptic poem, the lily-engraved spoon marked with an M, and now the old ring with an embossed rose. Each item was stamped with garden symbols or references to flowers, almost as if the family had used the language of flowers to communicate emotional significance. Vines for clinging to life, daisies for innocence, lilies for mourning, and roses for love and memory. Was there somewhere else in town notable for roses? All at once, Agatha realized she might look closer at her own rose garden. She'd tended it for years, but it wasn't originally her garden. The house had belonged to a local teacher who, rumor said, was distantly related to the Milano family. Perhaps there was some long-forgotten hiding spot under the large stone bench, or near the old rusted trellis. She set to work that afternoon, rummaging around her bushes, using a sturdy trowel to gently probe the ground near the trellis. After a few minutes, she struck something solid. Clearing away the soil, she revealed a small, flat wooden box bound with an ornate lock. Her heart fluttered as she recognized the swirling ivy design, an exact match to the key in her possession. Mr. Tibbles, lazing nearby, opened one sleepy eye as if to say, "What took you so long?" Agatha crouched in the soil, carefully fitting the tiny key into the lock. It clicked, and the box sprang open. Inside was a stack of letters, yellowed by time, and a fragile black-and-white photograph of a young couple posing in front of an enormous rosebush. Her breath caught at the words scrawled on an envelope, "To my beloved daughter, Camilla." She began to read, her chest tightening with each line. The letters recounted the heartbreak of the Milwaukee trip for an experimental medical treatment that had ultimately failed to save the family matriarch. They described the father's determination to preserve the memory of his wife by scattering personal tokens around their home. The ring was her wedding band, buried beneath their favorite oak tree. The teddy bear was the daughter's, containing the key to the box with the letters. The cloth pouch with polished stones symbolized resilience and peace. The spoon with M was the mother's treasured silverware from her own mother, representing the family name. It seemed that their hope had been that someday these tokens would be reunited, ensuring no piece of their love story was fully lost. Tears welled in Agatha's eyes as she turned the letters over, the weight of the story filling her. Their heartbreak and devotion spanned decades. She looked at the photograph of the smiling couple standing in front of that rosebush, with their little girl peeking shyly from behind them. So much love, so much sorrow, yet also so much hope placed in these hidden items. She decided these relics deserved better than to gather dust in her closet. The proper resting place, she felt, would be a small display at the Elmwood Historical Society for the community to remember them by. She thought about how the daughter, Camilla, might have grown up, and whether she ever realized that her teddy bear concealed a key. Or perhaps, having moved away, she never had a chance to retrieve the secrets her parents left behind. Within a week, Agatha arranged a meeting with the president of the Elmwood Historical Society, a bright-eyed retiree named Beverly. Beverly agreed that the story was a piece of local heritage that deserved preserving. She even suggested creating a special glass case featuring the family photo, the wedding ring, and the other items, alongside a brief write-up of the Milano family's story. When she returned home that evening, the air felt lighter, as if a hidden chapter of Elmwood's history had finally exhaled. Mr. Tibbles padded softly around her ankles, then hopped up onto the sofa to lick his paw. She sat down next to him. "My dear detective," she whispered into his silky fur, "you led me to a beautiful story. I never realized how far your nosiness would take us." The following weekend, Elmwood residents gathered at the Historical Society's small museum to view the new display. Agatha stood modestly near the back, but Harriet Bloom waved her forward to be recognized for her role. Amid polite applause, Agatha thanked Mr. Tibbles for his uncanny ability to bring home peculiar objects. A wave of warmth passed over her as she described how each item pointed to another puzzle piece in a decades-old family narrative. The exhibit was aptly labeled Remembrances of the Milano Family, and visitors marveled at how a cat and his devoted owner had pieced together this hidden collage of love and loss. In the wake of her small triumph, life returned to its unhurried pace. Agatha had a sense of satisfaction knowing she'd solved the riddle behind those strange artifacts. But each evening, as she sat crocheting by the lamp, she also felt a twinge of excitement whenever Mr. Tibble strolled back through the house. She could never fully quell her curiosity. Might he bring home another curious item one day? With Elmwood's mysteries laid to rest for the moment, Agatha returned to her tranquil days, tending her roses, chatting with neighbours, and indulging Mr. Tibbles with extra treats. Yet, in her mind, she remained open to whatever new secret might slink into her backyard or scuttle across her porch. After all, mysteries had a way of cropping up in the most unexpected corners of a small, peaceful town. And if that happened, she was quite certain her curious feline detective would be the one to lead her straight to the next clue.